Good evening. My name is Addison Field. I'm the Chief Curator of the Alaska State Museums. Thank you all for coming tonight. I would like to welcome you to Hashukahit, the Alaska State Museum here in Juneau, Alaska, Alaska's capital city and home of the Occupies of the Tlingit Nation, whose village site we're currently gathered in. It's my pleasure to do our introduction tonight. The Alaska State Museum is pleased to announce the opening of Slinkies in the Window Frame, an exhibition by Tamara Wilson featuring studio work and site-specific installation created of a variety of ingredients. The exhibition desires to understand the domestic by pretending and discovering who and what occupies space. Tamara Wilson is an Alaskan-born installation artist currently working in Fairbanks. She returned to Alaska after having received her Master in Fine Arts from the University of New Mexico at Albuquerque and an art residence in Tartu, Estonia. Tamara was awarded a Rasmussen Individual Artist Award in 2020. She's executive director of the Lemonade Stand, a mobile art space providing an experimental venue for arts across the state. Please welcome Tamara Wilson.
All right. So thank you, Addison, for that lovely introduction. And thank you all to everybody who are here to listen to me explain my work a little bit. And a big thank you to Jackie Manning for all that you've done in the last week during this installation process. So I've been down here for the week, and it's been beautiful. And thank you to the wonderful weather that you've managed to provide for me for the last week, because I do not do well in rain. So thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my work, kind of what I do, my materials, my interests, my inspirations, a little bit about the show, and then to finish, I'll talk about my side project, the Lemonade Stand. So I'm visiting Juneau from my home in Fairbanks, so I'm born and raised in Fairbanks. I did go to the University of Alaska Fairbanks for my undergrad, so I kind of relate to a lot of artists, students I've talked to earlier about in the student paper about just learning about art in Alaska and what that means. And so then I left Alaska to go for my master's degree in Albuquerque in studio art. But then after a few things like the residency that you had just mentioned, I returned back to Fairbanks. So when I was in graduate school, my work was really heavily focused on felt, sort of maybe if you saw the work tonight, the felt installation. So I really just worked primarily in felt that whole time. And so at this time when I was working with felt, it was the first time I started making the felt wallpaper. So there's a little bit of the wallpaper in the show tonight. And then after completing my master's, I did do the residency in Estonia. Adjacent to where the residency was, there was an abandoned Soviet-era factory, so it was kind of to my disposal, so I could explore the space. So it was a lot of fun. And then more recently, I did do a residency in Rovaniemi, Finland, at the Kurundi Culture House, the Rovaniemi Museum for Art. And that was a wonderful opportunity that was provided to me through the Anchorage Museum. So I'm an installation and studio artist, and I work with a large variety of materials. And a lot of those materials aren't necessarily what you would consider fine art materials. My installations that I make, these site-specific installations, are almost entirely made out of felt. But the kind of felt that I use is not like a really beautiful artisanal wool felt. It's more like that junk felt that you're given in elementary school to make presents for your parents, to bring home, to show your wonderful skills off on the refrigerator. And these installations that I make, they go up in a space. Then when they come down, I try to reuse the material in other installations, but as the material kind of gets less clean and kind of just the wear and tear of going up and down, it gets cut into smaller and smaller pieces until the pieces are so tiny that they can't be used again. And sometimes the scraps then get shoved into the work to make the cactus plump. So The other work that I do, my studio work, I have a lovely studio in Fairbanks where I make these studio pieces, and they really are made out of a super large variety of materials. Everything from like the flock on this piece, to the tile and the grout to hold it together on the wooden frame. I love finding materials and seeing what you can do with them in the studio. A lot of these materials are scavenged. They're remnants from jobs like construction work, little remnants from demoing other art projects or discovering them at the dump. I'd love to find all these different materials and sort of reuse them as many times as possible. So when it comes to this need of like reusing materials, it has a lot to do with sustainability. But it also has a lot to do with, like, I love working with these materials that all are like remnants from a past life lived. So all these materials have stories of their own, and they're kind of being rearranged, and then a new life is then created for them. It also allows me to be able to work no matter what. So I've always had a desire to create and make work, no matter what maybe my financial or location situation was. And by being interested in using whatever is at hand, it has always allowed me to fulfill that need I have as a maker. I'm a painter. I consider myself a painter. And I think this is an important thing to identify because it explains sort of how I work. So a lot of times when I'm making something, it's, I'm layering up different colors, I'm layering up different materials, and then I can step back and think about maybe tearing it all back down again. These larger felt installations, I really see them as paintings. So at one point I did use more traditional paint, and I made these wall-hung paintings, and they depicted scenes. Some of them were figurative, and that just wasn't enough. So they kind of got bigger, and then they were murals, and then they were these site-specific installations. And I really was more interested about the audience being the figure of the painting, being the subject of the painting. So these installations are like setting the scene for the portrait. They become the foreground or the context, and then the audience becomes the subject or the portrait. So my contribution is the background, and the audience becomes the focus, really, of the painting. So a lot of sort of my visual, my aesthetic is definitely shaped by everything that has shaped me, and a lot of that probably is pop culture, maybe from my youth. So growing up, what was maybe on television, what was around me, I wouldn't say that a lot of this is obvious to me at first, but then as I look back upon it, I can start seeing these connections that really, I had no idea going into it, but in the end, they're just so obvious. So these references might be from something associated with my generation, or they might be like the relics I grew up loving. So I consider myself a curious person, for sure. I love to learn new skills. A lot of ways I learn new skills is by different kinds of employment. Maybe I work as a laborer one day, a barista the next day, and I just collect all these different skills, and also new passions. So these passions or obsessions kind of lead to the discovery of different materials, but my attention span's a little fleeting, so I end up kind of skipping around to the next and then discovering new obsessions while I'm just sort of deep diving one thing. And the ebb and flow of this is kind of how I form my work. So for instance, this truck was a wonderful free vehicle, and it needed a lot of work. So I started working on it. I needed a new frame. It was from Homer, so it was completely rusted in two. So I started welding on it, and then, working with some steel more on the truck, and then what can I do with that in my work, and working with more steel armatures within the pieces. Then I'm painting the truck, turned it into a flatbed, and working with then the finishes, the leftovers from each thing. I bought this paint to paint the truck, now I got all this leftover paint, what do I do with it? Or like the truck bed liner, and like how goopy and wonderful and textural it is, like what could I do with that? So then bringing that remnant material into my studio and discovering discovering what I can do with it. So this is like a really super literal connection for you, how I got from like working on something and sort of my life project and then working it back into my studio. So then, maybe when I'm working with that finish on that, I now have used up all that remnant truck bed liner, but I still love that texture. So now I start adding like aggregate into silicone or paint or something to sort of keep using that same discovery. Another real good representation of this same kind of cycle. So so this is a collaborative piece between myself and my dear friend Lauren Carter, and our friend needed a cake. And so I decided to learn how to make a cake. I never made a cake before, and Lauren was excited to help me decorate the cake. So I started to figure out, okay, well, how do you do that? You got to bake the cake. You got to, do all these things, temperatures, whatever, all this wonderful stuff, discovering how to make cakes. And then it just sort of unexpectedly bled over into my work. So I never set out to make a painting about a cake, but yet here we are. And this just like keeps feeding into other things that, what are cakes, things of celebration. So not just the materials that I discover, but like the meaning of the things that I am, kind of discovering along the way. So, yeah, so this is kind of like how I discover the materials, how these different obsessions kind of come about, and the life projects, influencing and motivating and informing my art life. So I finally was able to complete a dream that I've always had, which was to build a home for myself and to have a studio to work in. So for a long time, for many years since I was a young teenager, I have been moving around, sometimes multiple times in one year. I've never really had a place to call home, many like vehicles or, friends that made me feel home, but not actually like a physical building. So I was finally able to build my home and studio, and a lot of the focus of my work has been super domestic. A lot of that felt installation work has been about making a home space, investigating those things, those desires that I needed. And so once I built the house and I had a house and I was doing housey things, I didn't really need to obsess over that in my work so much. But I still, through building the house, I was discovering things that I wanted to investigate in my studio. And so another really great example of that is the lampshade. I really wanted a table lamp. I wanted a lamp post at the end of my driveway. So I made a lamp post, and working on the lampshade, like figuring out a way for it to be, okay in the environment. And then that, of course, just translated into my work again. So another one of those things. So that's kind of how I come about the material and discovering the materials I want to work with. And then I think another really important thing to point out are all the people that have influenced, not all of them, but a few people that have really influenced my work and sort of the greater art world. So locally in Fairbanks, a wonderful artist, Kathleen Carlo, definitely was a huge influence upon sort of the beginning of my awareness of art, of fine art. I was fortunate to have her as an instructor when I was quite young. So we used to have a great youth art program in Fairbanks, and she taught a class in that. And not only did I love her work, and there's one of her masks here that's just stunning in the permanent collection, but she was just an amazing figure. Like, her work was really beautiful and had all these like really striking components, but she was a woman carving. I mean, it's just like she broke many barriers for me, and so it really inspired me to want to pursue art myself. And then as I started traveling more as an adult and finding more work out and experiencing more artwork outside of Alaska, I've come across artists like James Turrell, which really I associate with, like, when I think installation art, this is the first person that really pops into my mind. Another artist that I really love, that I like to kind of just give a little credit to, is Thomas Demond. And I think he's important to me because he shows me what you can do with simple materials. So this is a photograph of a constructed environment that he made entirely out of construction paper. So this is all paper, it's all ephemeral, and then he photographs it, and then it gets torn down, and then he reuses that paper in another installation in the future. And then just kind of more currently, a beautiful, this artist, Genesis Bellinger, she's a ceramicist, and I absolutely adore her work. And so this is kind of who I want to be when I grow up. But one thing I realized after moving back to Alaska, after completing school and kind of just traveling a little bit, is really how much influence I do get from my family and from being in Alaska. So of course, one of those people would be my father. So my dad, I think for me, the big influence my dad has had, who's here tonight, is that he's always taken the impossible out of everything. So I realized through watching and observing him work as a kid that if you want to do something, you just do it. Like if you want to build a house, build a house. You want to ski 60 miles, ski 60 miles. He just, showed me that everything is, you just do it. There shouldn't be any intimidation or barrier. My mom, who's also here, taught me the fundamentals of independent creation. That is she, for instance, teaching me how to sew really opened up infinite possibilities. So like in the realm of Halloween costumes, I could be whatever I wanted to be. And if I wanted to change my mind the night before Halloween, I then had the skills to do it myself and not make my mom do it. I was able to make my own clothes, and I could do things like make gallery sweaters, the installations. And together, they really have taught me, truly instilled the value of working with what is available, using local resources, seeing the possibilities opened up by people's discarded materials, working with what's around us, the stores that are around us, the dump that's around us. We don't have to necessarily work with the finest, most, wonderful, high-end quality things. What we have at our back door is perfectly fine to work with. And so I really appreciate them for teaching me that. Very important. That stayed with me my whole life. And then another really important person I would like to point out, Mark Fage is a dear friend of mine, an artist in Fairbanks, and he has really taught me the importance of self-worth. So really just realizing to recognize that my time is valuable, putting the importance on my own time that I give to my own work, but then also the time I give to other people. He has also been very instrumental in ensuring that I've always had a place to create with the tools I need to do so, maybe when I haven't always been able to provide that for myself. So, and then the other thing that's I think is really important to talk about when it comes to my studio is what sustains my studio practice. And so doing all these things, having all these projects, and being just like my mind racing all the time, it's really important to be able to step away from that and enjoy the things that make Alaska so beautiful. So maybe that's floating down the river with my wonderfully supportive partner. That can clear my mind and allow me to be able to breathe again and take in the world around me, and so that when I go back into my studio, I have the energy to keep creating. So one thing I love about Alaska is it's so unforgivable and beautiful. So when it's just always so motivating. So like when the fire goes out, you have to get back to it, right? It's just bringing you back in the moment constantly. When the car freezes up, you have to work on it. But also there's that need that's kind of unforgiving. You then appreciate when the sun comes back and everything around you and how beautiful it really is. So, like I kind of mentioned earlier, when building my own house, and kind of fulfilling that need that I had, my work has taken this shift into these more like creature-like forms. So I have been making a lot more installations based off of sculptures themselves. And that kind of brings me to the show at hand, the show outside at the museum. So while getting ready for this show and packing it up and sending it down here, I was thinking about, all the things behind the pieces. And let's see, the sort of the awesome undertaking that it was, and really having fun with what the objects are that occupy the space. So the name of the show, Slinkies, and the window frame, the Slinkies represent these creatures that occupy the space. So as I've been able to have a home and I've satisfied that domestic need that I was so searching for, I'm thinking about, okay, well, now what do we do in this like wonderful house we've built, right? So like, what are the creatures? What are the things going on? And so these are the Slinkies. So the Slinkies, I think, are kind of fun because most people can relate to the children's toy of a Slinky. It really doesn't do anything other than just kind of bring you joy and like have a little fun with it. It doesn't do anything else beyond that. So that's sort of what these pieces are. They have no purpose. They don't house me. They don't keep me warm, but they might bring me a little joy, and they might be able to bring that to the people that see them. The big thing that I'm so grateful for with this show was the opportunity to finally make this framed piece. So the installations I've made up until this point, up until this show, have been those felt installations. And even though maybe I've worked with them adjacent to my sculpture, they've always kind of just been together, but not communicating together. So originally, as a painter working on a panel, and the painting got bigger, and I made it for the audience to be within. So now it's kind of come full circle, where the painting is now, the installation and the people are now being reframed, and so now they're like an object again within the context of all the other work in the gallery. So the people really are the figure, the portrait within the painting. And this idea kind of first came to me when I was thinking back on like my experience as an Alaskan kid going to the city, being in Chicago. When I went to the Chicago Art Institute Museum was the first time I'd really seen artwork on a wall. I mean, I'd seen beautiful artifacts and all the wonderful things that are made in Alaska, but I hadn't been to that like real white wall space with things on the wall, like with art on the wall. And there was one piece that I knew was going to be there, and it was Picasso's guitar painting, which I adored, but it was really the only thing I knew about artwork, about that kind of fine art world. And I saw all these giant paintings on the wall. I kind of had my Ferris Bueller Days Off moment where I'm like, whoa, what's going on? What is all this stuff? Who are all these people? I don't know who these people are. They're royalty. I don't relate to them. So this idea, I thought, really was important because then the people, the audience, are then elevated to a level which, it kind of validates their importance. They're there. They're the ones enjoying the artwork. So that's my show, and I'm so happy that the Alaska State Museum has given me the opportunity to sort of really see this dream come together. So thank you for that. And then I'd like to finish by talking about an additional project that I have, if you just give me a second here. So in addition to everything else that I kind of occupy my time with, I have a side project called the Lemonade Stand. So what the Lemonade Stand is, it's a travel trailer that was collapsed with snow. So I gutted it out and rebuilt it so that it could be structurally sound to be an empty box. And then within it now, it's just this nice white space people can do whatever they like with. So you can hang work on the wall. You can do more traditional shows. When we started, COVID happened, and so we shifted a little bit. So our first shows were very virtual, featuring the wonderful artist Lauren Carter. This was one of the first shows we had, so I would digitally display the work. And then moving beyond that, we've done a lot of collaborative shows with nonprofits. This was with the Fairbanks Children's Museum, where we had young children make portraits of their best friends. All the work was hung at about like a 36-inch eye center level instead of your traditional like 57 here. So that was super fun. We do group shows sometimes on occasion. So again, the cake's coming back into the mix. Can't let my influences just stop in the studio. They gotta like keep going. So this was a super fun collaborative show. And then we like to do shows that feature local members of our community. This is Megan Schultz. She's an amazing farmer in Fairbanks, working really hard to bring beautiful flowers to the Fairbanks community. And then, of course, my personal sort of favorite, I don't want to influence people too much on what they do, but if they want to do an installation, I'm like all about it. So we've had some really beautiful installations. Once in a while, people just can't quite get that deadline, so then I just kind of swoop in and have to show my own work. So that's sort of fun sometimes. It's only happened once, but you never know, it might happen again. And this is our first sort of first real, fully committed installation by Mercedes Colton, and it was a very beautiful installation. So it's really just an art venue for people to be able to experiment and investigate something that they want to do, that maybe the traditional gallery venue doesn't quite fit. We don't have any overhead. We're completely sustainable. The place is built. It runs off of solar power, so we take donations and can have gas to go to the next location. But for the most part, I have no need to collect. I don't collect any commission from artists, so it's just it's a free open space for artists to really experiment without those pressure of trying to be more of a commodity. We've done sort of bigger outside of the trailer events. This was a beautiful collaboration between Forrest Anderson, a musician, and Maita Agobian, a puppeteer, and they did a projected collaboration, so bringing people together that maybe hadn't worked together. And then moving forward, really excited about the idea of an artist residency. So this last summer, we had our first artist in residence, KB Jones, who came in from Brooklyn, New York. She drove up and painted along the way, and then we showed her paintings when she got to Fairbanks. And then we also had Jimmy Weirden from Anchorage. He came up and did a short residency as well. So that's the lemonade stand. And so if you're an artist or you just kind of want to see like some different art migrate to your location, the lemonade stand is kind of a perfect thing for that. And the big dream that we have for the lemonade stand is to one day do a ferry show, where we would work with different artists from all the ferry stops, and we would be able to park the lemonade stand at one location and show it the work, and then keep going, so that work was then, kind of exposed to all the ferry communities. So that's one big dream down the road. So that's my work. That's a little bit of what I do, and I really want to say an extra thank you again to the museum for the wonderful experience I've had here, and another big thanks to my parents for coming down. It's been wonderful to be able to show you the work. And then Lauren, thank you for coming in. But of course, a huge extra thanks to my wonderful partner, Matthew, for putting up with me for the last year for all this and always being so supportive. So thank you. And I do believe we're going to do some Q&A, if that's, yeah.
Anybody have a question? I've got the microphone here.
Is it possible on the spot to expound on Star Trek The Next Generation's wonderful influence on your work, particularly the cornucopia dentata?
So big Next Gen fan. I think it was on 4 o'clock every day after school. So I watched a lot of reruns. It was a major run to the TV after the school bus dropped us off. I watched a lot of Star Trek with my brother. I recently, maybe the last, 15 years ago, I kind of went back and watched, the original Star Trek, and then I worked my way to loving Deep Space Nine. It took a bit, but you just gotta stick with it. I'm a big fan of Gene Roddenberry and the Star Trek. I just love sci-fi, so it's wonderful to be able to escape. Kind of have several genres of things I love. Sci-fi is one of them. Mobster is another, so I don't know, I love The Sopranos, but it's a balance. You got to have the ability to escape this universe and pretend a little bit. So that would be the influence. I don't know if there's a whole lot of like Picard in my work, but if you see a little bit in there, that's wonderful. Yeah. Anybody else?
Is that Hoag's bedliner?
Hoag's bedliner, are you referencing the truck?
The truck,
Yes.
Why is that bedliner so has so much texture?
So that's the material you're referencing is the undercoating, the truck. So you line it so that the car won't get rusty again. So that truck was in Homer, it rusted in half, and then I thought maybe I could put an underbed coating on it, but in the end I kind of shifted gears with that. But yes, the original owner of that truck, his name is Hoag. So question in the back?
I just wanted to ask about those small wooden pieces that have like the wicker seat bottom on them. Can you talk about those? Because those look like really different than the rest of the work, and I really like those.
Okay, so thank you for asking about that piece. It's called A Long Conversation About a Chair. And so that piece is made up from all the scraps that are cut off from a lot of my other work. So for a minute there, I was making all of these kind of like quilt shapes, those smaller wall-hung pieces. There's quite a few stars in this show. And so when I did all those different angles with the miter saw, I get all these little tiny angled pieces of pine, and I was just burning them, for kindling. But then I thought, well, I should make something out of that. So I have all these tiny little pieces, so these shapes were kind of coming about. And I had done some work with caning in the past, and I just really love the material and how it works. So the inspiration for that piece as a whole, The Long Conversation About a Chair, there's this giant poster in Mark Fege's office at his studio that has the history of chair design. So I think it's like, from a designer's standpoint, kind of reinventing the lamp, the table, or the chair. It's like you've made it, right? So it's this long conversation about the history of design and and the greats that have come before, and how will you be able to reinvent it? So it's just kind of this like stage that has been built, and so that I was thinking about that when I was making those pieces, as far as. Yeah, the inspiration for them themselves. I just really love the material, but also reusing the remnant pieces. So. Any other questions?
Thank you very much for speaking with us tonight. Really appreciate it. I remember the first time that I saw an artist installation, and I remember where I was and who I was with, and walking into the room and being just like, wow, kind of like mind-blowing. And I wonder what you've been working in Alaska now for some time, and I wonder what we as humanities people can do to help facilitate you and other artists like you are working with these installations in the state.
Well, that's an awesome question. Thank you for asking it. So installation art, it's one of those things that, you can't like sell a piece to kind of keep it going, right? It's the commoditization of your own work is sort of hard to do. So facilities that will really support that are, nonprofits, museums, facilities that are buildings, institutions that are gracious enough to be able to sort of take a chance on an artist. A lot of time the installation work won't be totally materialized when you're applying for an opportunity. So as far as like what we can or what maybe we need from places like this is just, I guess, I don't know, taking chances on artists, but giving more opportunities specifically to installation artists to kind of just normalize normalize that it's a totally fine thing to do. You don't have to sell your work. Also, there's nothing wrong with selling your work because we have to live. So, I don't know, just making more spaces like the lemonade stand where it has no overhead. If there's like a portion of a museum that has enough change and has enough support that you can provide the space. I don't know, really just being encouraging to other artists to explore what they might want to within a space. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, Tamara. I like that you called the Slinkies creatures, that they have some animus of their own. They exist outside and have their own life beyond your creation. I was wondering, as you worked on the Slinkies, did you find that they had certain care and attention that you had to commit to?
Oh, I do like that. Let's see, care and attention. Yeah, I guess, I'm super nostalgic and sentimental about lots of things. So I kind of have that with objects already. Like for some reason, I've always been obsessed with like the things my mom has had before she had kids. It's like the remnants of her past life. And I always kind of read into objects a lot more than one probably should in a sort of healthy perspective of it. But so my artwork hasn't always had that, that sort of, reading within its own life or of its own like spirit or being. But these creatures definitely have taken on sort of that, like, I'm a bit more kind to them. I don't really want to cut them up and make something else out of them. A lot of my work I end up just kind of reusing and rearranging. But I don't know. Maybe it's this weird, like, nurturing thing coming out of me, which would be unexpected. But yes, I do find that they have an added component to them that I haven't noticed in the past.
Thank you. Do you think of them as familial? Like,
Yes.
Are they
Yes.
your kids?
No.
No.
I'm not responsible for what they do or where they end up.
They're more like close friends.
Close friends, roommates. They should probably pay more rent, but
This is incredibly banal and not meant to minimize your work, but what's the name of your dog?
that is the most important question I've been asked all night. His name is Lefty. His full name is Left Eye Lopez, shortened to Lefty. He's a Australian cattle dog, blue heeler. He's going to be 6 in April, and he's sort of the best thing ever. Yeah.
Tamara, thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for the great questions. Thank you.